I don't know if you're like me. I'm taking a guess. I feel pretty confident. I'm feeling decently confident in this little guess I'm going to take, this little assumption that I'm going to bring to the table to you this morning, and that is this, that I'm not the only one in the room who loses things from time to time. I don't know if you want to admit that in front of everybody, but I lose things from time to time. Mainly, I forget where I put my keys. Anybody else forget where you put your keys every once in a while? Let me just see. Nobody. No one forgets their keys. Oh, thank you very much. We got 3 people. The rest of you are liars. That's great. This is good. This is start off really well. I lose keys. I have misplaced my wallet from time to time. Let me tell you something that revolutionized my life, because I have been known to leave my phone in places, and then iPhone came out with this thing of Find My iPhone. And so all you got to do is jump on another device and pull up your account, and it'll tell you where your iPhone is, right? It's unreal. Like, even down to like a couple meters away, you're like, hey, my iPhone is here. It's fantastic. And then this crew came out, and they said, hey, you know what? We could do something better, because here's what's happened. If your iPhone dies, then you can't find it no more, right? And so this company came out with these things called a tile. You ever heard of them tiles? And you can slap it on anything. Sometimes they're stickers, sometimes little keychains. You can put on anything, and then you can jump on your phone that you didn't lose, hopefully, and you can find whatever that tile was attached to, right? Now, some things in life, you don't attach a tile to, or Apple Tag, or you don't have to find your iPhone. It's just, hey, it's just missing. We have lost it. We have misplaced it. Or someone, typically this is what happens, someone has put it where it's not supposed to be, and I go to the place where it's supposed to be, and it's not in the place it's supposed to be. And so I haven't lost it, though it does certainly feel lost in that moment. And then I was, just kind of taken aback. I'm just openly sharing with you, so I hope this isn't offensive to you, because it was certainly offensive to me. I heard this term. Now, I might have heard it previously, but there ain't no recollecting in my past where it was this prominent thing, but I've heard this term a lot lately. And I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but this is what happened. So we were at the office, and our ice cream truck sometimes is used as like a moving utility van. It picks stuff up from here, it takes stuff back to the office, because it's got a bunch of space in it. And there was something we were looking for. The object we're looking for does not matter, but there was something we were looking for, and it was supposed to be in this ice cream truck. And so Brooke, our next steps director, who did our hosting this morning, she was looking for it, and so Jason was like, hey, it's an ice cream truck, I'll go find it. So Jason goes out there to find it. He comes back in. He's like, it ain't an ice cream truck. Right? And so she's asking, hey, where is this thing? And again, I can't remember what it was, but I was like, Jason said it's not an ice cream truck. And she said, well, did he look in an ice cream truck? I said, yes, he looked in an ice cream truck. And then this is where it happened. She said, did he man look or did he look? And I was like, whoa, you need to chill. Right now, you need to calm down, Sassy Bridges, Like, what is happening here? What do you mean man looked? She's like, let me show you. So she walked out to the ice cream truck, and sure enough, there it was. Sometimes we lose something. If a guy goes out there, I'm assuming this is what it means. Not that I'm guilty of this. My wife, she's in the back. You just, right there. Not that I'm guilty of it, but other men probably guilty of this. And we go in there and like, oh, no, I don't see it. And we walk away. And then people have this expectation that we're actually going to get down and move things to look underneath it. Like that's preposterous. Why would we do such a thing, right? Why would we do such a thing? When we talk about losing something, we're talking about misplacing something. Sometimes in my brain, if I lost it, I'll just go get a new one. You know what I'm saying? Like, I ain't got time to go rummaging through the bottom of the closet to find whatever. I'll just go to the store and I'll grab a new one, It'll be shinier than the last one I got, When you lose something, when you misplace something, you have a choice to make. You have a choice to make. And here's a true statement. The choice will always be yours. It always will be. It always has been. It always will be. And Jesus talks about this choice pretty directly. Jesus, his MO is he wants to make sure that he lets everyone know that everyone has a choice about a lot of things in their life. But he shows up on the scene in his life and he says, you know what, I think you're missing a little information. So I want to make sure you have all the information so that you can make an informed decision. Right? He shows up and he says, hey, the idea we have about religion and what it is, it's incomplete. and I'm here to fulfill and to fill in, to complete that which is missing. You don't have all the information, he says multiple times. And so Jesus, in particular, when it comes to things that are lost, he wants to make sure that before you make a decision of whether or not you want to go search for and look for it, that you have all the information. But more particularly, he's not talking about a thing, as he's talking about a person. Now, before we jump into what Jesus is talking about, I need to set a stage, and I need to give you a little character development about what's happening in this picture. There's a guy by the name of Luke. Luke's a doctor, one of the most educated guys that writes in what we know as the Bible. The Bible has two sections in the Old Testament, which talks about everything to get us to Jesus, and then Jesus shows up, and everything that happens because of Jesus comes in the New Testament. Well, Luke is a guy who's a really smart, incredibly educated guy. He's a doctor. Dr. Luke, he makes a decision, you know what? Jesus is so significant in my day, so he was in the time of Jesus. He's like, Jesus was so significant, I want to make sure that people, long after Jesus is gone, have a really good idea of the things that he said and things that he did. And so he begins to write this narrative, or this collection of moments out of the life of Jesus. And so there's one moment in particular that he shares with us that gives us a really good picture of the type of folks that are hanging around Jesus. And it's in Luke chapter 15. This is the 15th chapter of Dr. Luke's little memoir that he's put together about the life of Jesus. And this is what Luke says in chapter 15, verse 1 and 2. He says, "Now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and teachers of the law muttered, 'This man welcomes sinners and eats with them.'" So I don't know if you noticed, but one of the most important words in all the English language is the word "but," right? Because there's something in front of it and there's something afterwards, and both of them have something to do with each other, and "but's" the indicator. Like, hey, this is the truth, but here we go, right? We try when we're saying, hey, we're going to apologize, let's leave the "but" out of it. For some reason, though, we just put the "but" in it. And so in this moment, there's this before piece, there's this after piece, and the "but" tells us, hey, there's something significant happening between group 1 and group 2. Group 1, the tax collectors and sinners, just to define who these folks would be. Tax collectors are working for the Roman government. They're occupying Jerusalem, and the Roman Empire continues to grow. And so they employ people from the local area as tax collectors. So they employ these Jewish folks in Jerusalem to collect taxes. And these folks actually are not all that great. They can count really well. They just like to take a little extra. And so they don't sit well with everybody else. And so most people are despising this crew of folks, these tax collectors. Sinners just describes anyone who's not doing what God wants them to do. And so God has his expectation for the people of God. And when people don't meet those expectations, then that's what they would classify them as. We're just a sinner. And so you have these cheats and these sinners, these defiers. And what they've done is they've come and listen to Jesus. But the Pharisees and teachers of the law, Pharisees are like religious leaders, right? So the religious leaders are there. And then it says the teachers of the law, more specifically, it's like lawyers. They know the law really well, the law of God, just incredibly well. If you had any question about the law that God gave, or the law that they've added on to what God gave to make it like abundantly clear how to live every second of your life, you could ask these guys and they would tell you, right? So these Pharisees, these religious leaders, and these teachers of the law, these religious lawyers are hanging out. And so you got one that's come to listen to Jesus. You got one that's here to do something else. Did you hear what they're there to do? The first crew is there to listen. Did you hear that? Tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus. But Pharisees and teachers, the religious leaders and the lawyers of the law, they were there to mutter. Pretty interesting word. One crew was there to talk. The other was there to listen. One was there to learn. The other crew was there to lecture. One crew came with an open mind, and the other one came with an open mouth. And that's the setting for what Jesus is about to say. You see, Jesus sees this audience in front of him, and he knows that he needs to do a little teaching. And when Jesus tries to teach us about things that are a little over our head, he makes a decision to use a story. The Bible will call them a parable. And basically, the way we define parable is it's something that we don't know hardly much about, that Jesus tells us in language we know everything about. And so he said, I got this concept, and I'm going to tell you something you don't know a lot about, but I'm going to use words and illustrations and thought pictures that you know a lot about. And it's going to help explain these things a little over your head. And so that's what I want to do. That's what Jesus wants to do. And so he's thinking of these two audiences, and he begins to share this short little story. In Luke chapter 15, Dr. Luke tells us what he says. He says, "Then Jesus told them this parable. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and he goes home. He calls his friends and his neighbors together and says, 'Rejoice for me, because I have found my lost sheep.'" He says, hey, I want to make sure everybody hears this. These folks and these folks. There's a guy, he had 100 sheep. And it came time for him to take inventory of them sheep. And he started counting them, and he realized he got to the end, and he's one short. Now, if I'm him, I'm probably counting at least twice, because he's about to get in a whole heap of mess if he actually got to leave the 99 to go get the one. So in my mind, I'm like getting to 97. Oh, goodness, I'm one short. Let me start over 1 second. And then he's probably yelling at the sheep, "Will y'all stand still so I can count y'all?" You know what I'm talking about? And so he's figuring out, I got to count this right. Maybe he counts them 2 or 3 times. I don't know what Jesus doesn't say. But for sure, what Jesus does say, as he comes to the conclusion, he's missing one. He's one short. And so he has a decision to make. Now, Jesus seems to think it's a pretty clear-cut decision. He says, doesn't he? When it counts that he's one short, doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the one? Jesus thinks it's an easy choice, but Jesus also realizes it's an easy choice for Jesus. But it's not an easy choice for people to listen to Jesus. So he wants to make sure he clarifies a little bit. He says, you know what, I got to put a little more into this, make sure I paint this picture really clear. This shepherd that makes this decision, he has to kind of go through a few different thought processes or thought patterns in order to arrive at the conclusion that he arrives in this particular story. And so I want to walk us through it just for the next few minutes and just see if any of these resonate with you, or maybe you're like, I don't know, that would be difficult for me to do if I were that shepherd. The very first thing that he wants us to make sure we understand is that this shepherd had to acknowledge that the one exists. He had to acknowledge the one exists. In other words, he could have done what sometimes I do. I can't find it. I'll just get a new one. You know? I don't need that one. I ain't going to miss that one. Or even maybe the attitude of, well, goodness gracious, I got 99 more. I mean, you can't win them all. You know? You can't keep them all. I got 99. He says, hey, you got to acknowledge that the one exists. The alternative is tunnel vision. The alternative is, no, I've only seen what I got here in front of me. That I realize, you know what, something ain't right about what I'm seeing in front of me, but that's all I want to see. This is it. I'm not interested in taking a look over. No, I don't want to see what's over there. I'm not interested. I'm appreciating what I'm in right now. This is my lane. This is where I feel at home. This is where I feel comfortable. I like this life right here. I like this field. I like where we're at. But the truth is, there's a lost sheep. And here's the truth. Whether you want to acknowledge it or not, that sheep's still lost. Sheep's still lost. Whether we want to admit it or not. Now, what Jesus is about to do is about to introduce this idea. He's about to introduce the idea that he's not really talking about sheep. But he's talking about people. And more specifically, he's talking about people who his Father God has an enormous affection for. An enormous affection for. And that he would go so far, and we find this in the life of Jesus, that not at this moment in this story, but we fast forward a little bit, Jesus actually reveals that the whole reason he's here is because of the one. Because of the lost sheep. Because of lost people. Now, sometimes that feels harsh. It's like, well, how could you call somebody lost? I understand. And what I have found in my interaction is a lot of times it's someone's made a decision without all the information. Or they made a decision with the wrong information. You see, they've decided, I don't want anything to do with God because I think God hates me. I think God's angry with me. I don't want anything to do with Jesus because Jesus couldn't love anybody like me because I realize I made some mistakes. And honestly, I regret those mistakes, but I can't change them. So here I am. This is me. And Jesus ain't going to be okay with that. And someone's told them that, right? They picked it up somewhere. God has not knocked on their door and told them that message. God didn't write them a letter and say, oh, by the way, I am so upset with you, I cannot stand to see you. God didn't write that letter. God didn't send that text message. God didn't jump in their DMs and say that, but somebody else has. Somebody else speaking on behalf of God, on behalf of Jesus, has jumped in their life and convinced them of something that's not true. So there's a lot of folks that have decided, hey, I'd rather be lost and away from somebody who despises me, who doesn't love me, who doesn't care for who I am, who has no interest in me. I'd rather be lost than your so-called found. And Jesus is saying, hey, this shepherd's, you see, he's got a couple things he's got to do. Not only does he have to go and find the sheep, acknowledge he's lost, he actually has to give a little bit more information. Because where the analogy breaks down is the sheep. The shepherd's going to put them on his shoulders, and he brings them on back. But the truth is, when we're talking about people, you can't put people on your shoulders and take them to Jesus, can you? No, it's their choice. But the important part is are we giving them the right information in order for them to make a choice? Or are we content with them having the wrong information or missing information? And just saying, well, look around. We got a bunch. So maybe they don't really understand what Jesus is about. Or maybe they have some jacked up ideas about who Jesus is for. That's not my problem, though. I got 99 problems, and they ain't one. He says you got to acknowledge the one exists. Second thing you got to do, he says, hey, you've got to go to the one. Did you notice when he's saying, he says, hey, you got 100 sheep, you lose one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 and go into the open country to go after the lost sheep? Now, so if you're going to go to the one, that also means you got to leave the 99. I love that he puts both in there. He doesn't just skip. And it's almost like, hey, well, of course, Jesus, if you go to the 99, you got to leave the one. But or go to the one, leave the 99. But he didn't want to take any chances. He didn't want to take any chances that any single person would say, you know what? In order for me to go after the one, hey, y'all want to go after the one? I need everybody to go because it's real uncomfortable for me to go by myself. If y'all go with me, though, I'll feel a lot better about it. So y'all don't want to go? Okay, well, they don't want to go. And they said, no, here's the deal. I want to make sure it's crystal clear. I need you to go after the one, which will mean you need to leave the 99. They don't have to come with you. Now, here's where we get messed up. A lot of times, if you're a follower of Jesus and you're watching this and you're listening, we begin to take our minds, and our minds are convinced that this is something the church should be doing, that the shepherd is the church, and that's what's got to happen. So the church has got to figure out how do you leave the 99 and go to the one. Well, he's talking about the church, but he's also talking about individuals. This goes on both levels. From an institutional standpoint, from a collective group of followers of Jesus, from what we do here as a church, the umbrella of foundation, if you will, yes, we've got to figure out how do we leave the 99 and go after the one. But so does every single individual follower of Jesus. He wants to make sure that both the individual and the church itself both acknowledge the one, that both go to the one. Now, a lot of times, the church is guilty, so I want to speak on behalf of the church for a second. The church is guilty of making the assumption that, you know what, the one that's over there, they will come to us. It's almost like we grow up in the field of dreams, and we say, if you build it, they will come. Right? Ain't that right, Maggie? Yep. That's right. If you build it, they will come. If you put nice chairs in, they will come. If you get some nice haze, boy, them lights going to look good, they will come. If we get a good band, give me some bass, come on. Give me a little kick drum, they will come. If I tell enough funny jokes, oh, they will come, they will not come. If you build it, they will come. Works with Kevin Costner in the movies. But it's not real life. And sometimes as a church, we forget. We think we're living in a fairy tale. And if we build it, they will come. Somebody needs to snap us out of that bad dream. It feels so right. But the reality is it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. So we don't want to make that mistake. both as the church and as an individual. So practically, what does this mean? Practically, what does it mean to go towards the one, to go towards someone who has a misconception of what God sees in them, a misconception about what God wants to accomplish with their life? Someone who thinks, you know what, God's not for me, God's against me. What does it mean? How do you practically, as the church, let's start there and we'll get into individuals next. As the church, how does the church make sure that we're leaving the 99 and going after the one? Well, I think for us, one of the easiest ways is that 72% of the crew that's here at Foundation serve on a team in some form or fashion, 72%. And so every single person that serves on a team is well aware. Now, the other 28%, I'm not sure yet. I can't vouch for you, but because I know you hadn't sat and listened to it week in, week out when we're serving, doing our huddles, those kind of things. But every single thing we do is geared for people who don't go to our church. All of it. We think through it. We never think through your particular family when we're putting something together. Now, it's a bonus when your family actually, my family actually likes this. This is great. We love this. But our team knows the 72% of the crew that works at Foundation in some form or fashion, serving one or the other, they know without a shadow of a doubt, yes, we want to serve every single person that walks into our auditorium. What is it called? It's a gym at Ruth Hill Elementary School, or at base camp, or back at Noonan High School, or an event in the field somewhere, or parking downtown, that 100%, it's a bonus that everyone in our church enjoys it, but the real mission is for the one. Now, it's hard sometimes. It's difficult to keep our church in that posture. It's hard because, and I'll just be transparent with you, there are people that in our past that send me emails and say, hey, I don't like this. I don't like this is what we're doing. And I'll respond to them and say, well, this is why we're doing it. This is why we're focused on a very particular group of folks. And the call is we want to be like Jesus. And Jesus was super clear while he was here, and he invites us to be just like him, to have that same clarity. And so people have emailed me. People, every once in a while, they get enough courage to come talk to me. That's pretty rare. But usually it's an email. And a lot of times, or multiple times, I won't say a lot, multiple times it's ended with, well, I can't give then. I can't support that. If that's what you're going to do with that money, I can't do it. Now, thankfully, we do really well financially in terms of managing the funds that we have. And so whenever someone threatens to withdraw whatever they give to the church, I just say, well, toodles, I don't know what to tell you. Deuces. Let the door hit you, with the good Lord split you, It's colloquialism I'm just kidding, I'm not going to say that. However, here's the hard part. What if we weren't financially healthy? What if there was a moment where we were just strapped? And a few folks that gave a significant amount came and said, hey, this is my ultimatum. Do things my way. We cannot do things that way anymore. Does the right answer change in that moment? No. Goodness, I hope not. I hope I have the courage to say, I'd rather close our doors than not be like Jesus. And I hope that you pray that for every single leader we have in our church. We'd rather close our doors than give up on the one. One of the other ways that we keep it at the forefront is we invest in church planting. We are a church plant that plants churches. And today, sprinkled in among you are church planters from all over the country. Here in this gathering, for those of you who are watching online, apologize, I can't show you them. They're hidden. From the West Coast, Seattle, all the way down to Southern California, all the way across the United States, New Jersey, states in between. There's 9 of them here. All among you in the crowd. For the 16 weeks, I get the honor and privilege with the church we helped launch in Griffin called City Church, with their lead pastor, and 2 of us get to invest and help share some of our experiences. And I tell you, I get fired up when I listen to their hopes and dreams and their heart and how it breaks for the people in the cities they've chosen to plant their church in. And it reminds me every single time I get to spend time with a church planter, man, everything our church has been through over the last 4 years has been worth it. Every disappointment, every tragedy, every crisis, every loss, it's all worth it. And as a church, that's how we try and make sure we stay positioned. But practically, how do you as an individual stay positioned for the one? Actually, I think it's a little simpler for a person. I can just give you 2 words. Eat and play. You know, they're making these communities where it's like live, play, work, like all those things in together. So when I say play, I'm not talking about like, hey, let's go play thumb war or something or play kickball, right? I'm not saying that as an adult. But I'm saying, hey, where do you play? And who are you playing with, right? Who are you playing with in your world, in your life? What are your hobbies? What are you doing? And are there people there that are disconnected that would fall into that one category? Or are you looking around like, man, I got a bunch of folks around here, about 99 of them, and they all love Jesus. And my life is good right here. This feels good right here. Or are you wandering off a little bit? Say, hey, if I'm going to play, I need to make sure I'm given a chance. To someone who's disconnected, so they might have all the information about Jesus, so they can make an informed decision, not a decision with the wrong information because someone puked Jesus-ness all over them and it was not the right kind. You know what I'm saying? Who do you eat with? Who are you eating with? You invite people into your life, share a meal, share your table. Who are you inviting to Applebee's? Nobody. Ain't nobody going to Applebee's. We're going to Charlie's. Give me some of them rolls. You know what I'm talking about? Boy, you can taste them right now. They're so hot and fresh. You know what I'm talking about? Don't be clowning on old Charlie's, okay? That Louisiana sirloin, it's okay, all right? It's okay. Who are you eating with? Hey, that's because I'll eat all your rolls. You know what I'm saying? I ain't got no problem. Give me Lee's basket and my basket. He says, hey, I want you to acknowledge the one. I want you to go to the one. And then you see this? He says, I want you to serve the one. You see, the shepherd goes out there and he says, hey, I'm not going to make you walk all the way back. I'm going to put you on my shoulders. Now, again, we can't put people on our shoulders. However, I think what Jesus is trying to say is that we feel and we show some responsibility for the ones that we see. The ones that we acknowledge, the ones that are brought into our life and we see, hey, this person's missing, then all of a sudden there's a responsibility that grows and wells up inside of us to say, you know what, I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to take some responsibility. I'm going to go. And then I'm going to do what I can to bring them back. I can't physically put them on my shoulders and say, hey, we're going to church, because at the end of the day, Jesus might not be at church. Truth is. But what I am going to do is I'm going to take some responsibility and I am going to do my part. I am going to do what I can do to make sure that they have the information for them to make an informed decision about who Jesus is. And I'm going to do my part, and I'm going to be there to answer questions. And when I don't know the answer to the questions, I'm not going to make it up. I'm going to say, hey, you know what? That's a little above my head. So I'm going to have to go ask somebody who knows a little bit more than I do. And I'm okay with that. Just because I'm a follower of Jesus doesn't mean I got to have all the answers to the questions. But that's where I'm at. A little responsibility. Church needs to do this. Individuals need to do this. Fourth piece. He said, would you acknowledge the one? Would you go to the one? Would you serve the one? Would you celebrate the one? Now look at verse 7, Dr. Luke records. He says this. He says, I tell you in the same way, chapter 15, verse 7, I tell you in the same way there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent. I'll read it to you again. I tell you in the same way, there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent. And I think he's saying, verse 7, I think Jesus is saying, I'm just picturing it. You remember our groups of people. Well, we got the sinners and the tax collectors over here. We got the religious leaders and the religious lawyers over here. And one's here to listen, one's here to mutter. One's here to learn, one's here to lecture. And he's sitting there and he's thinking to himself, he said, you know what, I'm going to say this loud enough for both of them to hear, okay? Hey, there's going to be a big party for one person who repents, or in other words, gives his entire life to Jesus, right? Yeah, there's one person who repents and over 99 people who don't need to. Right? In other words, hey, I'm going to throw a party for one of them folks more than I'm going to throw a party for all of you. And I think that doesn't sit well with us sometimes. We read it and we're like, hold on, Clint, one second. Why does Jesus want to throw parties for those folks when they're not throwing parties for the people who are doing right? And honestly, I'm offended about what you said earlier about the church is not for my family. Well, here's the deal. Jesus is for your family. But the church exists is for your family to jump in for families who don't have a church and don't have Jesus. That's what the church is for. And so when we say, hey, I got Jesus all day for you. But at the end of the day, then Jesus is calling you to something different. Jesus is calling you to band together and say, you know what, together we're stronger. Together we can accomplish more. Together we can see things that I myself can't see, that you might not be able to see, and we can see it together. And our view will be further into the bushes of the lost. We can kind of take a look and a peek behind places maybe I would never go. And that's what we can do as a church. You say, hey, the reason you've been out of shape is, and here's the truth, the reason they've been out of shape, there ain't no party for them, is because they forgot there was already a party thrown for them. They forgot they too were lost. That there was a moment in their life, and they might say, well, hold on one second, I grew up in a church family. I've been going to church my whole life. I know the Beatitudes and the disciples and all those things. I know all of them. I've been knowing them my whole life. Right? And that might be true. I know I can answer all those questions, right? I won Bible Bowl one time, you know what I'm saying? Come on. But you know, it doesn't matter what you know until you make a decision to give your life to Jesus. You can be in church your whole life. You can know all the answers. Your parents can be the greatest Christians on the planet, but at some point, you had to make a decision. Do I want that? Or am I just playing to make my parents happy? Is this mine? Am I going to take ownership? Or am I doing this to appease the people that are in my life that are authority figures? And up until that decision was made, you were lost. I think sometimes we forget what it's like to feel lost. We forget that we were in their very same shoes. And yet somehow, by some miracle in our life, we were given enough information, the right information, to say, you know what? God isn't angry and upset and hate me. And Jesus isn't against me. That both God knows actually who I am despite all of my mistakes. That Jesus has a plan for my life even though I've done a lot of things that are going to, in my mind, would limit my potential. That Jesus actually has a better way for me to finish this life that I've been given. That God actually has a destiny and a plan of significance for my life. Not of servitude to a God that's just angry and fist on top of our face. And we were given that information enough for us to make a decision. Because it's our choice. And it always has been. He also says, hey, not only has a party already been thrown for you because you were in their shoes, there's also another party coming for you. So be freaking patient, right? Like I'm making a new heaven and a new earth, right? Like I'm going to put this whole world back to right. And I'm going to put it back to right in a way you can't even imagine. And so that's going to be the party of all parties. And it's coming, but you got to be patient. It ain't coming right now. Right now, the parties that I'm throwing are people who are lost, just like you were, when they make a decision to become found. Because it's their choice. Always will be. You know, I think it's easy for us to talk about this. And this is a recurring theme for our church. Something that if you've been here with us a long time, I mean, goodness, you hear it pretty often. But I think sometimes we have a tendency to make it super theoretical. It's all theology. Say, okay, well, this is what the Bible says. This is how we study the Bible, and I'm going to pull that study out. I'm going to pull that study of God out, that theology out, and I'm going to understand that theology, and I'm going to get more head knowledge, and now I'm aware that these are things I should be doing. But this week, even for myself, it got a little more real for me this week. And it was an accident. This guy had no idea what I would be teaching on this week. He wasn't planning it, and I wasn't searching for anything. But I'm telling you, this just smacked me right in the face, hit me in the chest, took the wind out of my sails. It's been different, and I want to share it with you. So there's this Facebook group that I'm a part of. It's for businesses in our local community. And this particular Facebook group is not supposed to be anything about religion, and there's never anything in there about religion. It's all business stuff. And for some reason, one of the moderators of this particular Facebook group, he just made a decision. He was like, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. And I'm not sure if he's a follower of Jesus or not. I don't know. I have no clue. But he just says, this is his post, this moderator's post in this group. He says, for those of you who are church dropouts, why did you choose to walk away from the church? I'm just curious, want to know. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, look at this. This is about to light up, you know? People are going to tell him, don't, and that's what it was. What does this have to do with business was one of the comments in there. Like, what does this have to do with business? You know? But he's the boss of this little group, so he can do whatever he wants. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments. I wanted to read you just a few. First, I got judged for tattoos and getting married at 18. I've been back twice since, but both times no one spoke to me. Second, I was raped and became pregnant. No one cared how it happened, just that I was an unwed single mother. Number 3, everything I was told I would go to hell for, I saw the adults doing the exact same thing. 4, judgment. Not being accepted, parentheses, as an unwed teen mom, in parentheses, having to dress, act, and live a certain way. Number 5, this gets me going. There was a prayer group calling for punishment from God formed against my family because of lies that were told. Are you kidding me? Number 6, because my husband died. 7, I've actually tried several different churches. Everyone is so touched and into the band, and as soon as it's over, you experience gossip, judgment, and nastiness, usually towards people who just need the most support. Someone like me who didn't have all their stuff together. Number 8, it was no longer about religion. It was about what kind of clothes you wore, where you lived, what kind of car you have. Number 9, they were worried about offering, parentheses, money, more than anything else. Number 10, churches I went to were filled with a bunch of narcissistic, judgmental, bigoted hypocrites. I was told to leave because my hair was an embarrassment. We got to do better. We can do better. And the real truth is, if we really want to follow Jesus, we must do better. You see, that's not theology. That's not a Jesus story. That's not a cute, funny one-liner or an opening illustration. It's people in our community. people that right now you could jump on that Facebook thread and you can click on their picture and you can see how many mutual friends you have. Real people. Real people who have made a choice. And unfortunately, they didn't have all the right information. But they had enough to say, I'm done with that. And any God associated with it. Church, as a church, and as an individual, if you walk out of here with anything else today, I have made an enormous mistake. Here it is. Choose the one. Choose the one. Because at the end of the day, it's your choice. But if you're a follower of Jesus, we abdicate this choice to Jesus and we ask him, Jesus, what would you do? And Jesus says, thanks for asking. But the truth is, you already know. Choose the one. Choose the one. There was a moment in the life of Jesus where he invited this guy stuck up in a tree far from God, and there was the same crew that was muttering earlier that was there to lecture instead of learn, and the same crew was there, and they were upset. Jesus actually looks at them and he says, hey, salvation has come to this guy's house today. And then just to make sure he's clear with them as they're there to lecture but learn, he gives them a one-liner lecture and he says, here's the truth. I came to seek and save the lost. So whatever agenda you've got for me, put it in the trash, burn it to the ground, whatever you got, this is my objective. Seek and save the lost. That's why I'm here. And I'm gathering as many people with me as fast as I possibly can to join me in my objective, Jesus says. If you want to follow me, that's where we're going. If you want to follow me, that's where we're going. It's my hope that as a church, you will encourage our leadership. Goodness, I beg you to encourage me to never give in to anyone else other than Jesus and seeking and saving the lost. I'm asking for it. And as an individual, I hope you have some conversations this week that says who we eating with, who we playing with. Who do we eat with, who do we play with? And you begin to make sure, if you haven't already, I'm going to choose the one.